going to try to make this pretty brief because we want to make sure we still have one more group. Is that right, Rob? No, I'm the last one. Okay. All right. Before I plow into our educating consumers debrief, I'm with Fayette County Public Schools, Sustainability Coordinator, and so I work very closely with Wendy and Farm to School and educating our students about the value of local food, economic, environmental, and human health, benefits of local food. That's something I do a lot of. But for the procurement part of Farm to School and local food in our cafeterias, Wendy wanted me to pass this along. They are hosting a business partnership event with food service Monday, December 18th from 10 to noon here in Lexington at our district warehouse on Russell Cave Road. So my intention was to come and hand deliver these to whoever was interested over lunch, but I got distracted by conversation. So this is right here if you're interested in that. So please pick one up, or if you know someone who's interested. Lots of people I think would be interested who aren't able to be here today. All right. Our charge was to talk about how do we do a better job of educating our consumers from the youth all across all demographics and age groups about the value of local food and how to get their hands on it, and maybe even as importantly, what to do with it once they have their hands on it, right? So we heard over and over this morning that it's really consumers that are driving this, and the bottom line is consumers. And so first we asked ourselves, what drives consumers' food choice and habits? And a lot of these are probably things that drive your own, but we realized that convenience and time are huge, and that people are decreasingly have time to cook or even plan their meals, and frankly don't. And we see this as we see meal kits, and we see fast food, and we see convenience reigning supreme, right? So where does local food fit into that picture? How do we make local food convenient, inexpensive, fast? These are the kinds of things that seem to bubble up to the top when we're talking about what families or what people value. Even though nutrition and just knowing where your food came from are also cultural values, sometimes they don't bubble up to the top. And so what role does media play in that? And so we talked about then what can we do? We could have used another hour, and so we really just got the tip of the iceberg. So what can we do? What are the most successful strategies or innovative strategies that we haven't tried yet, that we're just now beginning to try, or that other cities are trying and regions to help market and promote local food? Some of the things, obviously Kentucky Proud is something that comes up, and helping people understand what Kentucky Proud means and defining local, making sure people understand what that means and the different levels of Kentucky Proud. Beyond Grits, how many of y'all here know what Beyond Grits is? Okay. So I just recently stumbled across these Beyond Grits publications in a couple of restaurants in the last year or two. But it's in partnership with Visit Lex. And Ashton, do you have a book on you right now that you can just kind of hold up and show? And so this is just an inventory that is that lists and describes all the local restaurants, all the locally sourced restaurants. Is that right? Is that a good way to describe it?
So yes. So Beyond Grits is this is their publication, but the addition of the local sourcing designation was the partnership. So I don't want to take credit for
Gotcha.
their work.
Okay. All right, so that's a publication.
Can you repeat it?
Oh, sorry. So Beyond Grits is an annual publication that Visit Lex puts out that lists all the independently owned restaurants and some other kind of destination places in Fayette County. We partnered with them. My office partnered with them last year to add a local sourcing designation. So we identify which restaurants actually are spending money with partners. So that's available. A new iteration is coming out February or March of 2020.
So few people in this room knew about that. How do we do a better job of making people aware of that? Because we know local food is something that people care about. How do we make them aware of that tool? And one of the ways I was multitasking this morning was drawing a storyboard for one of our high school film classes to do a PSA to get to all of our schools and all of our PTAs, all of our schools and all of our PTAs about, do you know that there's local food on your line every day if you're in a high school, every week if you're in an elementary school? These are the faces of the farmers who are producing it right here in the region, and then have some students and principals and teachers and parents share why they think that's important. Why have I not thought of that before today? I don't know, but it came to mind this morning, and that's one way to just get this on people's radars and help them understand what's going on. and raise awareness about. So we talked about people just need help with meal planning. Once they get their hands on this local food, they don't really know what to do with it. How do we go about doing that? Creating publications or literature for that. Community educators. We had 3 representatives from Lexington Public Library, which was fantastic, and they were talking about the mobile kitchen that they have. We talked about what Food Chain is doing with their teaching kitchen downtown. So we also talked a little bit, and didn't get to dive into this as much, about how do we connect all the pieces. There's lots of people doing lots of really great things for this education outreach, but there's not a hub. There's not a very good place for all of these individuals. And Ashley, this is probably the story of your life, I'm guessing, connecting the pieces and bringing all the people together. Better understanding of defining local, and yeah. Who else was in the room? Because this was not really very organized the way I just kind of blurted all this out, but who else was in the room who would like to share what we talked about that I didn't get to?
We would also comment about.
Wait, hold on a second.
You want this? You want to take this one?
I can walk down there.
Yeah. Yeah, just come on down here, it'd be easier than the remote.
Okay, anyway, we touched on local Kentucky Pride products, and I know a lot of people know me and who I am. I'm president of Kentucky State Beekeepers Association. I'm a full-time beekeeper. A lot of the honey and so is Kentucky Proud probably. I'm going to take a stab in the dark. 89% of our soy shelf has been brought in from out of state Kentucky. It's not Kentucky Proud. I understand you're making salsa. You got to, the ground thing, you got to get some bait or something to make salsa with. That's a little bit understandable. This work process, I can buy honey in Vietnam, I can buy honey in China, and put Kentucky Proud sticker on it. It's wrong. It's just wrong, and my whole goal is to get this changed. And if I have to, I will file a lawsuit on it. But it's going to be changed. I'm a full-time beekeeper. I was a tobacco farmer. I got a grant from the Kentucky Ag Development Board to diversify to full-time beekeeping. And now I've got grant money going from Kentucky Proud to advertise a competitor on TV, I don't care to call names, by B-Boys Honey, made in Casey County, Kentucky, and there's no clover honey made in Casey County. One's a new role surgeon, the other one is a distributor for Kentucky Proud, one of the Smith twins, and all that honey's on the Kroger shelf. It's, it's brought in outside the state of Kentucky. They have a few bees, and they may put a little bit of honey in there, but it's a large majority outside the state of Kentucky. It needs to be fixed because it's deceiving to the consumer. If we're going to talk about Kentucky growing, it needs to be grown in Kentucky.
Thank you. Other comments? Yes, sir.
I don't know if it was brought up during that session, but I would be interested in learning more about how we bring local foods to underrepresented demographics.
Yeah.
Look around this room here, we're a pretty uniform demographic. And so we need to think about how to address that.
Thank you for asking that question. We did talk about that. I just didn't make my debrief. And so Ashton, we asked Ashton directly that question. And so you want to just kind of briefly tell them what you shared with us, and that's how we're trying to strategically target that audience?
Yeah, I don't know, is Martin still here too? Did he leave? So Martin Richards alluded to it earlier, the Kentucky Double Dollars program. How many of you have heard of Kentucky Double Dollars? Oh, good, a lot of people. Good. Hopefully, probably all people from me. But CFA had a Double Dollars program. Bluegrass Farm to Table started a Double Dollars program. We merged efforts last year and received money from the Ag Development Board and from USDA to take this program statewide. And essentially, it doubles folks participating in the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, formerly known as food stamps. It doubles their benefits to purchase Kentucky-grown fruits and vegetables at selected markets. So we have, I think last 2017, I think we had 35 farmers markets around the states, 2 retailers, small retailers here in Lexington. Good Foods Co-op is one of those. And then the fresh stop markets in Lexington and Louisville. And so it's not the only way, it just is a way that we are trying to bring more local food to underserved communities who wouldn't have otherwise had it. So, yep.
The marketing of that is the issue, again, because people that need that don't know that. And I knew about this and told my students in my culinary class who actually used SNAP who did not know.
It's a really great point and something that we've struggled with from the inception of the program. As you know, with grant dollars, we wanted to maximize the amount of money that was actually going for incentives, and it's hard to balance that with marketing the program. But we fully recognize that we need to improve our efforts to get the word out about the program, because we know that not as many people. We know there's a large segment of the SNAP population that don't even know about it and aren't accessing it. So thank you, and if you have specific ways we can help do outreach, please let us know.
And I'm kind of adding that this social service program that administers SNAP has changed where everything is digital now. It used to be a face-to-face program to get those benefits. And you could then, as a person, say, hey, you can go to the farmer's market and they can accept SNAP. That's no longer happening. So we have to be even more creative because there is no face-to-face administering of these benefits anymore. WIC is,
Right.
and maybe working with your health department, because you can maybe make the assumption if you qualify for WIC vouchers, you qualify for SNAP. So then maybe that face-to-face happening in the health department could be a spot for educating about SNAP. That might be the only face-to-face we have opportunity.
Yeah, and we have hired as a result of the grant funding we received, we have hired a full-time Kentucky Double Dollars program coordinator, and so part of her role over the winter will be doing exactly that, meeting with SNAP and WIC offices in the counties that are participating, that have markets that are participating, to help them be that frontline communication for us, to help when folks are enrolling in benefits or have questions about their benefits, they can also say, oh, hey, did you know about this program? So, but we're open and appreciate any ideas or suggestions you might have.
Other comments or questions?
I have a question
Yes, sir.
to Lexington, Louisville, probably unrelated to most of the stuff we've talked about. How involved are food truck services in this program or these programs? Do you find a higher percentage of them involved in brick and mortar facilities, or are they about the same?
Yeah, so we've had a number of food trucks.
Speak loudly.
Yeah, can you come in? Can you come down, please? Get up, pick up.
Oh, okay. Okay, so in Louisville in about 2011, we changed our regulatory framework to create something called a mobile food unit vendor, otherwise more commonly known as a food truck. And in doing that, we put together some ways that food trucks could have an easier time getting their market developed. But we also did it in a way that protected existing brick and mortar restaurants from having somebody who served the same stuff park right outside their door and cannibalize their market. And so as a result of that, and also as a result of Community Ventures investment in a food processing, actually it's a shared kitchen facility and training center called Chef Space, we've seen our food truck market go from about a dozen to like 78. And so as part of that expansion, we've also seen a number of food trucks get to a point where they're ready to establish their own brick and mortar locations. So one that folks may be familiar with is a food truck called Grind. They do burgers, and they have an all Kentucky burger. So it's all the beef, all the cheese, in season, all the produce that goes on the burger is Kentucky. And they have left the food truck business to open a brick and mortar establishment in the Nulu neighborhood, which, if you're not familiar with Louisville, is sort of the hip and happening place to be. And so Grind is getting ready to, and may have actually already opened their doors on a second location, indicating that they're actually doing quite well. So we've seen a number of food trucks go through this process of starting in a food truck and expanding. We've also, and this is really interesting, seen it happen the other way, where a brick and mortar says, I'm gonna get into that food truck game because I think it's an opportunity to get my product out to more people. And so the best example of that folks may be familiar with is the Mayan Cafe. So they've got a really great restaurant also in Nulu. They have just in the past 4 months or so opened a food truck, and they are parked full-time at a local brewery called Gravely, which is in the Phoenix Hill neighborhood just around the corner from Mayan's location in Nulu. And so although they have the ability to cart that thing around, and they certainly do participate in festivals, their main business is to operate out of this food truck as a dedicated service provider to serve the customers at Gravely. So we've had it happen both ways. Not every food truck is using local. we have done a little bit of work with our food truck community on helping them understand ways that they can source local, but it certainly has not taken off to a point where I can say they're all using it, or 75% of them are using it, but it's definitely a growing population who are, partly because there's a huge consumer demand for it in Louisville. So hope that adequately answered your question. I can talk more about it.
What's happening in Lexington?
I would echo Tracy's comments about the order in which some folks start brick and mortar and open a food truck. I would say more gone the other direction. Lexington folks have incubated in a food truck and then opened a brick and mortar. Middle Fork is a really great example, and they do an excellent job sourcing local foods. I would say across the board, I would say most food trucks aren't sourcing local, but I think the ones that are doing a very good job.
Yep.
Great. Other questions before we call the commissioner? He just arrived down to get started. One thing I want to mention, somebody talked earlier about working with the groups that are challenged and in terms of food, getting them connected to food. I'd like to mention two things. There's a new restaurant called Deviate and The Table in Louisville, and both of them are working with those that have had criminal convictions, drug and alcohol. I haven't been to Deviate yet, but in Louisville, I go there almost every time I'm in Louisville, and I pay the 30% tip because they basically feed anybody that comes in. They want them to work in the kitchen or serve or whatever, but I think that's an excellent example, and I believe that they're very much local food oriented as well, if I'm not mistaken. So, other comments or questions? Well, what we were planning to do was kind of brief the commissioner on what we discussed today, but I think I'd rather have him come on down and talk and then